It's time to call out the conspiracy theories surrounding Captain Marvel. Listen, I didn't think the movie was good. I gave it a 4 out of 10. I wouldn't see it again. I would not recommend others go see it. So here's how I feel. If you saw the movie, you'd be like, meh, it was whelming. It wasn't really that great of a popcorn flick. There were a few really great scenes at the end. But the issue of today's video is that first, I want to clarify, yes, there is access journalism. Positive reviews are being made purposefully to maintain access to see movies early and keep your job. If your job is to review movies and you slam the movies you review early, they'll stop inviting you because it's bad marketing. This creates a conflict of interest for journalism, and then they overvalue these movies. So what do we see? An audience score of 59% and a tomato meter at 80. Here's the thing. On Metacritic, Captain Marvel has a 64. Perfectly in line with the actual audience score. Can I please just point out the conspiracy theories about review bombing are some of the stupidest things I've ever heard. No, there's not review bombing. It's not a coordinated effort. The actual critics gave this movie a 6.4 according to the aggregate on Metacritic, and the audience score is 59%, basically the same thing. That's a perfect alignment of the critics and the audience. It is not a conspiracy. Please stop. But there are more conspiracies. See, before the movie came out, people kept spreading this rumor that theaters would only play Captain Marvel, which is not true. And I saw journalists on the right saying, whoa, what's going on? If you go and try and buy tickets in advance, they're only allowing you to buy Captain Marvel tickets. Everyone was pushing this narrative. Captain Marvel only movie scheduled at certain theaters during its premiere weekend, because people were pointing out things like this. It's not true. The conspiracy theories are so crazy. I'll tell you exactly what's happening. Movie theaters don't pre-sell every single movie. It's opening weekend for a Marvel movie, okay? This Marvel movie has brought in $455 million from its opening weekend. That is absolutely fantastic. It is one of the biggest opening weekends ever. There are obvious reasons. It doesn't mean the movie was good. Let's get a little nuance in a situation. On the left, in the left corner, you have the left claiming the conspiracy from trolls on the right to destroy the movie has failed, and that the bad reviews are a conspiracy to just attack feminism. Not true. People just don't like Brie Larson, and the movie isn't that good. Even the critics think the same thing. The reviews are mixed. Even people who hate Brie Larson are saying it wasn't that bad. It was just not really good. I actually thought Brie Larson did a pretty good job acting. I felt like the movie's writing is what caused her the problems, and made her look relatively stone-faced and boring. The writing was awful. Brie Larson was actually pretty good. I think she was miscast in the role. She doesn't have she doesn't have the same kind of strength as Scarlett Johansson does, but her acting actually wasn't that bad. It was a pretty good job. However, the point I want to bring up is that, as I stated earlier, movies pre-sell tickets for big blockbusters. This movie did really, really well. Captain Marvel will probably get a sequel and did really well. It doesn't mean the movie is bad. Thor: The Dark World did worse with the critics, okay? On Metacritic for Thor: The Dark World, we have 22 positive reviews, 19 mixed, and 3 negative. The user score is a 7.2. I would give Thor: The Dark World between 6.5 and 7. Now, you may be saying, Tim, why the hell are you bringing up Thor: The Dark World? To deal with another bit of culture war nonsense, in my opinion. Many people saying that Captain Marvel is the MCU's first failure. I've heard that, and that is not true. They made money. This does mean there could be ramifications for the MCU going forward. Let's bring about the nuance here. This is not a clear victory for anybody. To the anti-feminist people who are mad at Brie Larson, however you classify yourself, you did not win anything, really. Although the negative audience score and low Metacritic score for Captain Marvel do show that it was a crummy movie to begin with, the fact that it made money shows that Marvel really does know how to market their product and make sure it turns a profit. What movies came out? Excuse me. What movies were out last weekend? Why did I see Captain Marvel? I had said weeks ago I was going to skip opening weekend. I was in LA for the Joe Rogan podcast, as well as Ruben and other shows, and it was my birthday, and I was bored, and we had nothing to do, and we went to the mall, and you were like, I was like, man, I really don't want to see it. And my friend was like, I kind of do. And I'm like, all right, screw it, whatever. It's a Marvel movie. I like Marvel. I might as well see it. I thought the movie was bad, but they still made money because you'd expect a Marvel movie too. Marvel moved Captain Marvel forward. It was supposed to premiere like last year at some point, and I think they did it for a reason. The movie wasn't overtly feminist, although it did have some really cringy on-the-nose politics, such as a guy telling her to smile more, a guy telling her that she'll never fly or something. It's called the cockpit. Them mentioning women aren't allowed to fly, weren't allowed to fly combat, which was true, what was true at the time. I don't know if it is today. And I kid you not, there's a scene where in the soundtrack they play I'm Just a Girl by No Doubt. It was really cringy. Now, I do want to point out something that I didn't bring up on my last video before we move on to addressing the issue of something called the Velvet Hammer, in that the trailers had nothing to do with the movie. The trailers were absolutely not this movie. In fact, there were many scenes in the trailers that weren't in the movie. They could have done a better job. Before we move on and talk about the actual phenomenon of access journalism, which I highlighted in the beginning, I want to clarify one more time. The movie did well. Okay, a lot of bad movies do well. Look at Batman vs. Superman and the DC movies. They've all made a ton of money, but people didn't like them. This means when you look at The Last Jedi, which was an absolutely horrible movie, after that, I just didn't want to see Solo. I was actually kind of like, oh, Solo might be cool. But what happened? The Last Jedi was so goddamn awful, and they were praising it nonstop. I said, these people don't know how to make a movie. I do not want to see anything they do ever again. To me, Star Wars is done. I also want to point out after Fallout 76, I'm kind of over Fallout too. You screw up the franchise, it has serious ramifications going forward. Captain Marvel wasn't an overt failure. Even people who don't like Brie Larson are saying it's a meh movie. Not as bad as Ghostbusters or The Last Jedi. No, actually, definitely not. Like, I give The Last Jedi a 1, because if you could give a 0, I give a 0. I give Ghostbusters a 1, like the lowest possible score. I'll say 0. I would have walked out of those movies. Captain Marvel was just meh. It was like, meh. There were some scenes and I was like, oh, that's really cool. I like how they did that. Some things were just dumb, and I think they retconned parts of the MCU that really bothers me. Ultimately, what's going to happen? Endgame is going to come out to explosive fanfare, bring in $2 billion, some obscene amount of money. Everyone's going to be happy. And depending on what they do with the miscast Brie Larson moving forward in the MCU, it can have some serious ramifications. So let's clear the air. The other conspiracy, my God, I didn't bring up, is that people think Marvel bought out tickets for their own movie to stop a flop. Because a bunch of people are pointing out that in their theaters, they were relatively empty. Yes, the theater I was in was also relatively empty. No, I don't think Disney bought back a bunch of their tickets to try and claim they won. That's ridiculous. Let's get rid of the conspiracies here and point out Marvel has an excellent track record. Why did I eventually go see it? Because someone I was with was like, I kind of want to see it. And I'm like, eye roll, sure, fine, I guess. That was my attitude. The reviews were mixed, and I said, sure, why not? Marvel made money because everybody is dying to see Endgame. Marvel knew that would be the case. They knew the movie was probably going to be lackluster, so they put it here on International Women's Day to try and get the political marketing, which they did heavily, which pissed off a lot of people, but also just before Endgame, so that everybody would be like, I need to see a movie before Endgame. We're about a month and a half from Endgame. I couldn't be more excited. But no, it's absurd to believe that, movie theaters were only going to show Captain Marvel because everyone was going to think it was awful, or that it didn't make money. Of course it made money. It's a Marvel movie. Marvel movies make money. In my theater, people were laughing and clapping and having a good time because normies don't care about any of this. This is why I said weeks ago, that while I was planning on skipping opening weekend, eventually got semi-dragged into it by a friend. The reviews were okay, so I decided to see it. But I said, it's probably going to do fine. It's probably going to be an okay movie. Marvel tends to do a good job. The fact that Marvel was able to get a meh rating, like a whelming rating, even the left said it was boring. The fact that it was boring and not a disaster shows that Marvel was able to do something better than The Last Jedi and Ghostbusters was able to do. Those movies are trash. At least this one wasn't complete trash, although I didn't like the movie and I would give it a 4 out of 10. But I want to move on now I want to wrap up with this one final thought. This is from The Last Jedi. This is a post from January 27, 2018. Is there any solid proof that Disney has paid off the critics to give positive reviews for Star Wars The Last Jedi? No, but you don't need that kind of evidence. They're not paying them off. This person responded, it's called the Velvet Hammer. It's used a lot in the corporate world. This is where you don't have to pay off someone. You just have to have the means in place to gently threaten someone. In Disney's case, they are in the process of buying out all the media outlets. They recently acquired 21st Century Fox media empire, with the exception of its news channel. So if you're a critic and you work for ABC, you might want to think twice about dissing Star Wars or even the porgs. Oh yeah, those little things. Since Disney owns ABC and all of its outlets. For at least the last 10 years, Disney has been lobbying heavily to gain control of the internet with purchases of media outlets in the $52 billion range. It's not a stretch to think they couldn't pull it off. Rotten Tomatoes is owned by Time Warner. Time Warner is about to be acquired by AT&T. With these types of acquisitions in the works, it would not be a good idea for a mere critic to come out against Disney's products, especially when it's a product that has billions on the table like Star Wars. I'm going to end by saying this. The movie was a commercial success. It will likely get a sequel. The sequel will probably be much, much better. Endgame will probably still be good. I'm bothered that they reward the negative statements of Brie Larson, but they do for Chris Evans and Mark Ruffalo too. So ultimately, I'm just kind of tepid in the middle. I'll end by saying one last thing. The dystopian nightmare is here. We're walking into it. The conglomeration of all of media, the refusal of journalists to challenge the establishment because they want to be on the good side of the machine, overt politics being jammed into our mouths, and those with bad opinions being banned. But I'll tell you what, it does create a hole in the market for voices like mine and those who would watch my content because I'm beholden to no one so long as YouTube allows, and we're still threatened on social media, allows us to criticize the system, we will. Plain and simple. Maybe we won't for long because they're coming for everybody and they're coming for me. They're taking things I say out of context. They're trying to falsely accuse me of certain things because they want you to fall in line, put on your gray jumpsuit, shave your head and say, thank you, sir, yes, sir, and how high should I jump? That's the future we're walking towards and it sucks. But I'll leave it there. The conspiracy is probably not true. I think it's all just dominoes falling over. I'll leave it with that. I'll see you all tomorrow in the morning at 10 a.m. on this channel. Thank you for hanging out. Adios.